In this video, I'm going to react to 7 ways US and UK pubs are very different. Welcome to another episode of Kabir Considers. This is the place where I react to music, media, sports, anime, anything related to popular culture. I'll watch it with an open mind and give you my 100% honest reaction to it. And if you could please hit that like button early, I'd really appreciate it. Now this is going to be really interesting just because I'm someone who, loves to go to the pub on a Friday with friends, just to unwind after a long day at work. It's the perfect place, great atmosphere. So it's going to be fun to see, how are US and UK pubs similar and how are we different? Because I've never been to a pub in the US. Like I've got nothing to really go by other than seeing when people on TV shows go to a pub in the US. And one thing I've noticed is that the US pubs seem a lot bigger. That's probably just because everything in America is bigger than it is here. But in them being bigger, it seems like that you don't really have that sort of like everyone sort of packed together. You can overhear each other's conversations. Really, you can make friends really quickly in pubs in the UK. So I wonder if in that sort of dynamic is similar in the States. I guess I'm going to find out in this video. So yeah, let's go. This is going to be me reacting to how US and UK pubs are really different. Let's do it.
In the US, this varies by state, but there's not a single one in the Union that mandates that pubs close as early as that.
Alright, let's do it.
Hello, I'm Lawrence, and I'm on a quest to uncover all of the memos that Britain and America lost in the pond, and one of those memos pertains to pubs. Pubs, where would we be without them? A question that...
Good point. Where would we be without them?
That's been decisively answered in the hellscape that is 2020. In fact, while we're on the subject of the pandemic, do keep in mind, Uncle Toby, that a lot of what you're about to hear in this video might temporarily not be true. That doesn't mean that it's not ordinarily true, it just means that pubs have had to make a lot of changes on either side of the pond. And the key word there is either. I think before I moved to the United States, I was under the assumption that America didn't have pubs, but specialised instead in bars. But
That's what I thought as well. Like, it was a recent thing for me to learn that America has actual pubs. I thought it was more sort of bars, like, upmarket bars, downtown bars, dive bars as they're called. So yeah, this is going to be quite fun.
America does have pubs. Sometimes they'll be the kind of pubs that are looking to mimic those in Britain or Ireland. And those ones are easy to spot because they'll
Why did he say Ireland like that?
say something like Johnny's Irish Pub. Or the Elephant and Castle in allusion to Britain's many castles and elephants. But then America does have pubs in its own right, usually called something along the lines of Merv's Tavern.
I see.
And since I'm now familiar with how pubs operate in both countries, I thought this would be a great opportunity to talk about 7 ways that British and American pubs are very different.
Okay.
So go and order yourself a pint of Foster's or Miller Lite as we order in the first round. The story of my drinking life goes a little bit like this. At the ages of 16 and 17, I could waltz up to the bar of any British pub and order myself an absinthe. And that's not because 16 is the legal drinking age in Britain. It's because A, door security is usually pretty lax, as in there is no door security. And B,
true.
I've always looked 4 years older than I am. No, the legal drinking age in Britain is 18, so imagine my surprise on my 18th birthday when me and a few mates went to paint the town red, not literally, that's another story, and I got carded for the first time in my entire life, and the problem was I didn't have any ID with me.
Gutted.
Fast forward 9 years, 27 years old, and I've moved to the United States of America. What's the first thing that happens as I enter a pub? I get carded. But then depending on the state, it is not unusual for people that are much older, sometimes 70 years older.
Really? He got he got ID'd? I mean, I think the drinking age in America is 21. Come on, he doesn't look 21.
To be carded at an American pub. Trust me, saw this with my own eyes. It happened to Dick Van Dyke.
What?
Of course, by then, I'd learned my lesson and I did indeed have some ID. Ironically, I get carded a lot less these days, one of the perks of being a YouTube sensation and 38 years old. So nationally, the legal drinking age in the United States is 21, but that hasn't always been the case. In some states, it was even once like Britain, a pub could legally serve somebody who was 18 years or older. In 1969, while Neil and Buzz were landing on the moon, teenagers could legally land themselves a glass of Blue Moon, but only in the states of Louisiana.
It's funny, this geezer.
And Neil Armstrong's home state of Ohio. And then something changed. By 1975, the number of 18 states had risen to 23. This was a domino effect following the recent change of the voting age from 21 to 18. The belief being that if somebody's old enough to vote, they're old enough to drink. The problem is, legislators didn't stop to think about what would happen if these two things happened at the same time. By 1983, the numbers plummeted as states moved to increase their drinking age once more to 21. This was seen as a response to an increase in drunk driving incidents. And the domino effect was complete in 1984, when President Ronald Reagan signed into law the National Minimum Drinking Age Act, which outlawed the purchase of alcohol by individuals under the age of 21. In 2020, one or two parental loopholes notwithstanding, the legal drinking age remains 21 in all US states and territories except Puerto Rico and the US Virgin Islands, where it's 18. Pubs, what are they good for? Well, the answer to that question could be different
Booze, surely, right?
depending on which country you are in. I mean, sure, in both countries, one of the chief aims of pubs is to give customers a place to get pissed until the cows come home. And if you've ever been drinking with me, that happens regularly. But the main difference here lies in their purpose in the middle of the day. In Britain, if we go to the pub in the middle of the day, often this can take on a quiet but social tone. We just go to talk over a pint. In a way, it's like how Americans go and grab a coffee. Coffee. Why am I saying it like that? One country emerges from this scenario drunk on caffeine, the other drunk on the street. Apart from that, it's the same thing.
This guy, I love it.
If you go into the pub in the middle of the day in America, you can usually expect that to be coupled with a sporting event. And that doesn't mean you yourself get drunk and start playing polo. It means you enter a pub that's simultaneously showing about 28 different sports. In order to do that, said pub would need to have a ton of these. That's right, in America, the term sports bar is almost redundant, though I'm finding firsthand the same is not true of the term sports bra. Don't ask, one word, tequila. But the reason that the term sports bar ought to be redundant is that just about every pub and bar in America is worthy of that title. In other words, it's incredibly common to walk into an establishment and be surrounded by television sets. And these television sets don't typically show repeats of Happy Days, but of the Cubs losing, or at least when I'm around. In British pubs, you will occasionally find a TV, but the emphasis is not on consuming television, but rather on consuming alcohol and the words of your friends. That sounded weird.
Yeah, that did sound.
Earlier in the video, I joked that we ourselves don't play sports while down at the pub, but in either country this isn't strictly true. Of course, in Britain this depends on whether or not you class darts as a sport, especially when you're at the pub because you've got a drink in your hand, which I've just realised is also true of professional darts players. Either way, darts are an incredibly popular sport in British pubs. In American pubs, even though you will occasionally encounter the odd dartboard, sometimes very odd dartboard, they're just not as big a part of the pub-going experience.
I see.
And when you think about the sentence, drunk people throwing sharp objects, that probably makes sense.
In fairness.
I'm often reminded of those stories of American tourists who enter a British pub, sit at a table and wait on a waiter to wait for them. Here's the truth, you could be waiting a long time because unlike the United States, British pubs tend not to employ table service. And this can be a problem, particularly when the pub is heaving in the sense of crowded, not throwing up. You want to make sure you get a seat. I understand that, right? So here's what you do. If you're there in a group, one of you
goes to the bar, the rest of you go to the table.
Go up to the bar while the rest of you claim the seat. The one at the bar orders all of the drinks and then it's his or her responsibility to carry them to the table. Just don't use the term double fisting. In America, things are different. Even during the Super Bowl, which is not a national dish, you can fully expect to receive table service in most pubs throughout the land. Of course, this could be partially dictated by the tipping culture that exists in America. And fellow Brits, that's not the same thing as fly tipping. At the end of the day, we go to the pub to get absolutely rat-arsed or to have a casual drink. And so to some degree it's going to vary from country to country as to what is on tap. There are some crossovers and I dare say some exceptions to what I'm about to say. But there are lots of differences in the beers that are served, and this can vary from pub to pub or even region to region. Any pub, British or American, worth their salt will feature a comprehensive list of local beers. Naturally, these are going to be different between Britain and America, but also between regions within each of those countries. But then you get down to the big names too. In Britain, you're far more likely to be ordering the Australian beer Foster's than you are Samuel Adams. If that's not your bag, there's always Carlsberg or Carling. In America, Budweiser or Miller Lite. And if you want one that unites the two countries, you could go for the Belgian beer Stella Artois, which in Britain is trashy and in the US it's classy.
I like it.
And then of course there's the pint size itself. Let me go back in time and hand you over to Lawrence from a few months ago. Great Britain might be unfairly known for its warm beer, but at least you get more bang for your buck, or should I say quid. You see, a British pint is larger than its American counterpart.
Really? Huh. I would have thought a pint would be a universal size.
To some, that might sound like something that I cooked up after, 4 pints of Stella, especially since each country defines a pint as 1/8 of a gallon. But here's the catch. Gallons are different too. In the US, a gallon is equal to 3.79 litres. In Britain, it's equal to 4.55 litres. So 1/8 of a US gallon gives you a pint of 473 millilitres. A good old British pint clocks in at 568. And this is great news for American beer fans in Britain because it means that 6 American pints are equal to 5 British ones. You'll be slaughtered before the pub quiz starts. Aside from the fact that you now have a particular song stuck in your head, you're probably asking the question, what's the difference between British and American closing times? You see, in Britain, right up until about 2005, it was mandated that pubs had to close at 11 p.m. On the one hand, you could get around this by starting your drinking session earlier, say at 7 o'clock in the morning. On the other, given the time difference, you couldn't stay around long enough to watch wrestling pay-per-views. But then in 2005, a law was passed that said that pubs could stay open 24 hours so long as they had a specific license. But by all accounts, it looks like most British pubs haven't applied for this license because they still shut at 11 p.m. In the US, this varies by state, but there's not a single one in the union
I'm not sure about that because there's quite a few pubs that I go to that are open way later than that. So maybe this, since he put this video out, there's been another change or something, or maybe more pubs have started applying for that specific license.
mandates that pubs close as early as that. In fact, 27 states in the Union permit their pubs to stay open until 2 a.m. And it's usually at that time, after tequila, that my voice really does sound like that. Now, there are some notable exceptions to this rule. Alaska and Hawaii are to drinking times what Puerto Rico and the US Virgin Islands are to the legal drinking age. In other words, they're so far away from the mainland they can sort of get away with it. What can they get away with? Staying open until 4 and 5 a.m.
Wow.
There are state and local exceptions to those rules, just in case you were thinking of moving to either of those states. That's closing time on this episode. Let me know in the comments below your experiences of pubs in either country. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter.
That was fascinating, just to learn that, you know, there's to be honest, there wasn't as many differences as I expected. Obviously, things like the names and drinking age, I kind of thought that that would be the case, because I remember The Simpsons. Obviously, you've got Moe's Tavern. You don't really have pubs here called something tavern. We don't really use that. Most of our pubs are like named after something noble, like the Duke's Head or Spencer's Arms or the Long Sword. Do you know what I mean? Like just these Game of Thronesy type names. But there wasn't as many differences as I thought. Aesthetically, they look pretty similar. The decor. I think your pubs are a bit bigger, and you use sports bars a bit more. But no, that was a lot of fun to watch. Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, turn on bell notifications, and keep throwing the recommendations my way. I know I say it all the time, but they genuinely help me out, because if I know you enjoyed watching something, I'll definitely enjoy reacting to it. So like, subscribe, turn on bell notifications, keep throwing the recommendations, and I'll catch you in the next one.